warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Ted Oles.
If you're thinking about telling stories, the only scary part, because you guys are really supportive, it's the lights. The lights are intense. In my mid-20s, I was living with this woman, and she seemed perfect for me. I mean, we were hot for each other. Our personalities meshed perfectly. But I just couldn't see myself married. And then one night I had a dream. She was floating on a plank of wood in a pond full of deadly snakes, water moccasins. And I swam out and I rescued her. And when I woke up, I knew that was my brain saying I needed her in my life, because for me to brave snakes says a ton. We've been married 30 years. I hate snakes. I mean, like, unless there's some snake handlers out there, those Pentecostals or whatever, you guys all hate snakes. But for me, I'm beyond you. I promise. Like, my favorite thing about living in Michigan is we have no deadly snakes. And people will go, well, there's that Massasauga rattler. Well, no, that's 10 inches long. If it bites you, you throw up, you don't die. Plus, it's so rare, I only know one person that's ever even seen one. I know 3 people who've seen flying saucers. We are more likely to run into outer space aliens than a rattlesnake. And check it out, I'm over 50. 2 different doctors anally probe me every year anyway. I'm not afraid of Martian abduction. I will never move out of Michigan. But in February, my wife, Judy, and I, we went to Australia. On the airplane, I read for the first time that 9 out of the 10 deadliest snakes in the world are from there. I'm not sure I would have got on the plane if I had known that going in. We started out in a town called Perth, and Judy's always got to go to the zoo in a new town. And once I'm at the zoo, I've always got to go to the reptile house, because I'm fascinated to see snakes behind glass. And I'm looking at them, and I always think, there's some poor soul whose job it is to handle this thing and to feed it and to take care of it, and it just gives me the creeps. Now, they had 1 snake in that zoo, and it was the 5th deadliest snake in the world, and it was called the common, C-O-M-M-O-N, common death adder. And I'm thinking, these people are so used to being around these monsters, they've taken something they call a death adder and downgraded this one to a common kind. Like somewhere there's the extreme death adder, right? And it gave me the chills, because next we were going into some wilderness. And we went to a national park called Kangaroo Island. In the van heading from the airport to the lodge, a guide told us the only thing to worry about on the island is the tiger snake. 3rd deadliest snake in the world. And I'm thinking, only? I mean, that's enough, right? And then he goes, everywhere else, it's black with orange stripes, but on the island, the orange has evolved away. It's a plain black snake. It's so hot out, we probably wouldn't see one. February is the height of their summer. Plus, if we did run into one, it'll almost certainly take off. They're very shy. When we got to the lodge, we had to wait a little bit for our room, and it was one of those all-inclusive resorts, so booze and food are included. And they had this big, help-yourself bar in the lobby. And so we each got a glass of wine, and we sat and waited. And I'm reading this guest guidebook where the guests have written about the animals they've seen on the island. Everyone had seen kangaroos. Everyone had seen wallabies, which are like tiny kangaroos. Almost everyone had seen koala bears. But I'm turning through it, and one guy, suddenly there's a drawing of, it looks like one of the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. You know, the one that has the fin on its back, like that kind of dinosaur? And it's a 6-foot-long lizard called a goanna. And he's the only one that saw one. In the whole book, he's the only one who saw one. But then he wrote, didn't see a tiger snake, though, and he put a sad face. Like, I'm thinking, what? And it turned out, like, way too many people did see tiger snakes. He didn't, but 1/3 of the people saw tiger snakes. And every morning I went running, and there was a road from the lodge down through the forest, they call it bush, down to a highway. And a couple miles away, I'd run to the highway, turn around, and come back. And the first day I plop on my iPod, and I start running. but it's 100 degrees out, and iPods die over 95. Half mile into it, my iPod fries out. And suddenly I realized the music had been distracting me from my very important paranoia. Because I saw that all of the trees had black bark. And that meant a tiger snake on the road is going to look a whole lot like these sticks that are all over the road. And you might think, if I'm truly afraid, I should go back in the lodge and not run. But I'm a mess if I don't run every day. I mean, it's more mental than physical. So I knew I had to run. But what I did do is I made sure I did not get within 20 yards of a stick until I knew that's what it was. But it was 100 degrees out. I didn't see anything that day. That night, we went for a safari out in the forest looking for koala bears. It was out in the country dark. I mean, it was dark. And there was 12 of us, and we each had flashlights. And these other people are walking around, like flashing their lights up in the trees looking for koala bears. I am shining my down at the ground. I'm like looking where we're walking. I am not going to step anywhere near a stick until I know that's what's going on. I wanted to see a koala bear, but I was going to be careful. And I warned the others, and they looked at me like I was crazy. Judy, too. She looked at me like I was nuts. Even after, I say to the guide, have you ever seen tiger snakes out here on this safari thing? Loud enough for the others to hear. She goes, only 2 or 3 times. I was like, hello, we should not have been out there, right? I mean, but we didn't see anything. It was too hot. And the next day I went running, and it was 100 degrees again, and I was cocky. And I started only checking out sticks 10 yards ahead of me, and I didn't see anything. It was too hot. That afternoon, Judy, a guide, and I, we rented 4-wheeled motorcycles, and we went out for a ride up through the bush. We rocketed down that road that I run on. We got to the highway. We turned left. We went a little bit, and suddenly there was a dirt path heading back into the woods, and we turned up it. And like the leaves and the trees and the bushes, they were pretty close to that dirt path. And I have to tell you, when I was 6 years old, I think part of my fear is I saw this movie. I do not remember the name of it, but it was about Marines fighting the Japanese in the Pacific in World War II. And these Marines were walking through a Pacific forest, and a snake jumped out of a tree, bit a Marine, and he died in a minute. And I'm like riding through this. I'm in a Pacific forest, right? And I'm thinking, holy. And we get in a little bit, like a quarter mile in, there's another path that takes the path we're on and takes me back to the road that I run on, and I stopped. And I thought, I think I'm going to tell these guys that I don't feel well and I'm going back in. But then I thought, it's 100 degrees out, I'll be fine. And I was. It was too hot out. The last morning we were there, a thunderstorm came in before I went running. It was a loud, loud thunderstorm. And by the time I got out running, the temperature had dropped 20 degrees. And I start out running, and I'm as cocky as I'd been the day before. I'm only checking out the sticks 10 yards ahead of me, and I'm running, and suddenly, not too far ahead of me, was a dinosaur. Like, I'm looking, it's a iguana lizard, and it's right there. And I'm like, whoa, man, no one sees these. I'm not afraid of lizards. So I just kept running, and it took off. It's cool. Got down to the highway where I turn around, and I'm turning around, and suddenly, something bad happened in my brain. I thought, it would be cool to see a tiger snake. And the only thing I could say is, number one, I'd be able to go and sign the guest book, and I'm the only one that has seen every animal, because I've seen the iguana and I've seen a tiger snake. Or maybe it was more, I thought, I'll see it will see me, it will take off, like the lizard did, like the guide said it would, and I had something cool to talk about. So I decided to run up that dirt path. And I'm running up the dirt path thinking it's going to increase my odds. And I immediately realized this is a horrible idea. Because the road is one color. I can see what's going on the road, but the path was like brown and black and green and white, and I'm not even sure where I'm stepping. And when I got to that other path that cut back to the road a quarter mile in, I was really happy to get back to the road. And I turned up the road and headed for home the last time. Maybe a half mile from the lodge, out comes my wife for an exercise walk. She walks most days, but the first few days have been too hot. We've been married 100 years, okay? But still, guys, you know, you want to impress, so I stood up a little bit taller and I ran a little bit faster, and she had her headphones on, so we just waved. 100 yards after I passed her, I'm on the right-hand side of the road. 10 yards ahead of me on the left-hand side of the road, a 7-foot-long stick starts to slither. I froze. And if I had not stopped, that snake and I would have met 10 yards ahead of me. And it got there, and it stopped. And it looked at me. And I saw death. And I said, I think aloud, "You're supposed to take off." Because it didn't. It stayed there looking at me. And I thought, maybe this one's got anger issues. And I realized I was shell, like I had no pride, no courage. Everything melted away. I was nothing. I had to pee. And the snake, on its own time, went up into the bush. And it raised up high, and it looked around. I mean, it was the king of that jungle. It wasn't afraid of anything. And then it went further back in, and I thought, okay, I can go up now. I went to the far side of the road, and I started running back. But meanwhile, I'm looking back over my shoulder because I'm thinking it might come back out after me. And then suddenly, I'm like 10 yards further down, and I'm still, looking back. And then I realize there could be another snake in front of me. So now I'm looking in front and in back and all around. It was horrible. But I got to the lodge, and I just thought, man, that was intense. It was early, but I thought, I'm going to get me a Bloody Mary. And as I'm reaching for the door, a tiny little voice deep inside me, maybe the last little ember of my courage, it goes, "No, we've got to go warn Judy." Huh? She didn't believe the sticks could be snakes. She's distracted by music. We got to go warn Judy. No. We can get the drink because that snake's in the bush now. It's cool. She'll be fine. You were worried about other snakes yourself. There are other snakes out there. I could see through the window. I could see the vodka bottle in there, and I don't want to go back. You like to talk, and you're going to want to talk about having seen this snake. And if you don't go back and warn her, and she hears about it, she's going to know she's married to a coward. Shit. I turned around, and I ran back to warn the love of my life. And with each step, I felt my pride and my courage come back in tiny little bits. But I'm a superstitious man, and I promise you, one of my strongest beliefs is now, careful what you wish for. I was not hoping to see another snake. Thank you.
Ted Oles.